Hey guys, so I saw the Death Note movie and it was a piece of shit. 1 out of 10. I hated it. It was garbage. Dumb fucking stupid bullshit. Since I saw it, I've been debating what kind of video I should make on it. Obviously, I'm very opinionated on the film, but I'm usually not as inclined to make a full huge project video on something if I know that other people are already covering it. Hence why I never watched or reviewed films like Ghostbusters, Pixels, and the Emoji Movie. Obviously, there's more to say about Death Note than just it's bad, but making a huge project out of it just seems a little redundant for myself at least. Anyway, Chaseface asked me to record a conversation with him over the film to get my input on it for a video that he's making, and the conversation worked out well enough that we decided to post it as its own separate video. It already exists on his channel, but I figured I'd post it here with his permission just so that more of you guys could see it, because I'm aware that a lot of you are wondering exactly what I have to say about this steaming pile of shit. So yeah, enjoy hearing me rant about this movie for almost 2 hours, and feel free to check out Chaseface's channel. There's a link in the video description. It's literally the first one, so you don't even have to open it all the way. It should be relatively easy. So yeah, go over there and say danks, because otherwise this long rant wouldn't exist without his idea. Also, I didn't have to edit any of this, so that kind of worked out for me too. Oh yeah, and one last thing, there are spoilers in our conversation. Not like it would ruin the experience of this awful film, but if you haven't checked out the anime, I would highly suggest that you do so before watching this video. I wouldn't even really call myself a fan of anime, and I love this show. If one good thing came out of this awful film, it's that it's forced me to examine exactly why I love the anime so much. So yeah, please do yourself a favor and check that one out before watching this if you haven't already. Alright, here you go.
We pretty much just started talking about the Death Note movie immediately and didn't do any sort of formal intro, so enjoy.
So there was that point... Ugh, my voice is just gonna be awful this whole time.
No,
There's that point that you were talking about that your friend was saying, like, yeah, so you're saying a high school kid wouldn't use it to get pussy. Sure, but why even make a film trying to capitalize off of a pre-existing franchise where the entire success of that franchise is based off of how characters are portrayed and the interesting dynamics they have, the interesting types that they are, and completely abandon all of that and say, okay, now we're just going to make it a cliched, stereotypical American high school kids movie. That's fine, but why even call it Death Note?
Exactly.
Right?
That was
if you want to make something, like, it's fine to make something different, but you're not just making changes, you're completely ignoring literally everything that made the original successful. So why even adapt it if you don't even give a shit about anything that made the original successful or fun to watch or appeal to any audiences? Like, you've literally gutted it, you know?
Yeah, no, exactly.
And so, yeah, I mean, they also threw in really cliched, stereotypical bully jock characters for no reason.
Who I believe were credited
and it's not
as
to suggest
number 1 or 2.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not to suggest that American high school students don't get bullied sometimes, but same goes with Japanese students. It's not like that needed to show up just because it's an American remake. And so when you look at changes being made, you kind of have to ask the question, okay, what about this change made it better? Because if it's not going to make it better, in anyone's opinion even, right?
Yeah.
Like, the most that people can say is like, oh yeah, well, it doesn't ruin it. But if you're going to change anything, why not? Why would you be making changes unless you have a better idea for it? The problem is Adam Wingard doesn't know how to make a good movie. And
that's absolutely true from what I've seen.
He really, I'm sure that every single change that he made to the Death Note story and characters is a change that he thought, man, this is so much better. You know, that's just who he is. Did you see his remake of Blair Witch?
No, but I heard it fucking tanked.
Same fucking thing happened. Completely misses the point of the original to such a degree that why are you even remaking it?
Yeah.
Why are you even using the same intellectual property? If you, like, I get it. Money, brand recognition, I get it. But if you're not going to make something that the fans of the original would enjoy in any sense, then what's the point of using brand recognition? Because the people that you're supposed to be luring in as audience members, because they recognize that brand, you're completely isolating them. You're completely what's the word? There's a word that's better than
Ostracizing?
isolating. I guess so. Ostracizing. You're completely just spitting in their face, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, if you can't even make this appealing for the demographic that if they didn't exist, the movie wouldn't be made.
Yeah.
You know, there would be no green light. There would be no semblance of anybody saying, this will be profitable, unless there was a fan base of people, you know, that appreciated aspects of the original in some sense. If you're not going to either faithfully attempt to recreate those aspects that people loved, or try to correct issues with the original by making something better or fixing something, if you're not going to try and do any of those things, then what's the point of making a remake? Other than, I get it, money, but like, if this was in theaters and not Netflix, like, no one would be watching
Oh
it.
yeah, absolutely.
You know, like you wouldn't. This would bomb so hard.
Like, people really are drawing a lot of parallels to Dragon Ball Evolution. I think one of the reasons why we're not seeing, you know, that much of an overlap is because it's not a theatrical release, and the people who are fucking already paying for their Netflix subscription are just like, you know what, why not? Like, I have nothing better to do.
Oh yeah, exactly. It's the same as torrenting it when you're already paying for the service.
Yeah. I wanted to ask, because I looked up, like, I did a little bit of research on Adam, and I mean, in interviews, he seems, you know, humble, as all actors or all directors tend to be. Looking at his Twitter is obviously a completely fucking different story.
Hilarious.
Yeah, my friend did say, he's like, you know, the one who's creating the movie, he's like, no, in all honesty, Adam Wingard's a complete fucking cunt. And from what I've seen, like, anyone who uses the laughing and laughing until crying emoji, like, unironically thinking that they're dissing people,
Yeah.
it's like, suck my dick, you're such a fucking douchebag.
It speaks of so much projection of,
Oh, yeah.
like, this is the emoji that I'm including to try and make you think, or to try and instill the emotion of, haha, I'm laughing at you.
Yeah, like, I'm so
haha,
confident
like,
you're wrong.
Yeah, exactly. When it's like, you should be using your words and not resorting to, like, an emotional response.
Yeah, like, it's in your best interest to actually articulate your points and defend why. Like, if he had come out and said...
Emotional manipulation.
Yeah, if he had come out and said, you know, I get it, the movie's not for everyone, but we made it different enough, and I think you should treat it as an adaptation rather than a direct sequel, or like a, you know, direct remake, then I could actually respect that. Like, it's still not good, but at least he'd own the fact that, like, I get it, it's not for everyone.
I'm trying to think of something that, man, there was something, yeah, so, I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming did a good job of distancing itself from the other works, in a sense, even though it was kind of a reboot, kind of not really.
Yeah, it seemed like it made
decided to
improvements.
make, instead of trying to do the same thing but different or better or worse or whatever, they instead just took a completely different route, and that's part of what made it work, is that you're not forced to make those comparisons when it's a completely different product. Unfortunately, I mean, this wasn't... If they were going to use that defense by saying, like, oh, yeah, this is just a completely different story set in the same universe, change the characters' names. Why do you have to have the same characters? Why are you pretending as though those are the same characters if what you're supposedly aiming for is a completely new, fresh adaptation that has nothing to do with the original? I don't think that's what they were aiming for. I genuinely believe Adam Wingard was like, you know what this needs? Gore. That's gonna be so cool. Everybody loves that.
And a lot of
I
fucking
love
swear
gore.
words, too. Did you count how many swear words there were? Like, you could kind of feel, at least I thought, you could feel he was really trying to push it. Like, no, this is still dark. It's just dark in a different way. The amount of times I heard the phrase motherfucker in the first 10 minutes, I was a little numb to it.
I didn't even pay attention to the swears, honestly, but I feel like the film was at constant odds with itself in terms of what kind of demographic that they were trying to appeal to. And not just with the whole pre-existing fan base that will literally get nothing out of the new adaptation, but the entire film plays off as some shitty family channel teen high school bullshit movie, like made for TV movie, You know, it might as well be like cyberbully. You know?
I did get that vibe, yeah.
And then just out of nowhere, like, gore, and then, you know, adult themes here and there. But for the most part, it's like you have shitty high school teen movie guy actor, and I'm sure a few of them are from that same sort of genre. Definitely the main character, if you look up his IMDb, it's just like nothing but shitty teen bullshit high school movies, and that's it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mia's, whoever her actress is, her mom was like a really historical actress. I think she did the damsel in distress in King Kong. So like she clearly, and she actually got in by being Wolf's. His last name's Wolf, right? I honestly keep blanking on it. The guy who did
something like that.
She was dating him before the movie, so I think that's a little bit of nepotism in action. Always good for a film.
Nat Wolf,
yeah, that's it. But when did you get into Death Note? Like, how old were you? When did you discover it? And like, what were your general thoughts on it? Were you like a mega fan, like I was, or was it just like, oh, this is cool?
I guess I started watching it when I was like 15 or something.
Yeah, I think same actually.
I don't know what year that was, maybe 2007 or something. Let me check. When did Death Note come out as a...
I want to say, because I read it in Shonen Jump when it was like being printed. And so I read the first few chapters. I want to say I was like 13, 14. I'm 27, so I was born in 1990.
Yeah, I guess the TV series ended in 2007.
Oh,
so
okay.
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
I'm pretty positive the whole thing was ended before I started watching it. But yeah, I don't think I'd ever really consumed any kind of anime show before that point that wasn't marketed towards children, I guess. You know, like I grew up with Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z and yada yada yada.
Yeah, so not really a big anime fan, but Death Note's kind of one of those shows where you make an exception because of the sort of darker themes.
I will always describe it as the anime for people that don't like anime.
Yeah, pretty much that and Cowboy Bebop for me.
Death Note, I mean, like, sure, there are some anime-esque things that show up every once in a while, especially later in the series. But, I mean, for the most part, it's, regardless of format, the meat of the show is the cat and mouse game and the characters, and not necessarily like really in your face kind of anime.
Yeah, exactly. You know? It kind of doles it out with Misa and L and shit in select quantities, but overall it's more like you said, the tense cat and mouse game. Yeah,
so I really loved it. I watched through the whole series in a short amount of time. I think I watched every episode twice within like a few months, honestly. Really enjoy it, still do.
And I mean, I couldn't help but notice that you use predominantly, unless something else is more fitting, you predominantly use the Death Note soundtrack in like all of your videos, and I mean, it helps that it fits with everything.
There's a couple songs that work well.
Yeah,
it's good, like good thinking music, which is how the tracks were presented in the show. In a sense, it would always be, you know, when he's talking about his desk fire burn the book drawer contraption thing, and you know, or like there was a lot of like thinking music going on in the show.
I never really thought of it like that. That's a good point. My friend, you know, who was defending the movie I was referencing earlier, he was saying one of the most unfortunate things about the anime coming out was that it's so fucking good compared to the source material of the manga that like you can't go back and read the manga because the music's just that goddamn good. It's like the whole atmosphere.
There's a lot that is in the show stylistically that I really enjoy. So like even if we were to take the same sequence of events, the presentation really adds a lot to it. Once again, Adam Wingard gutted the entire thing. I always thought that a Death Note live-action film adaptation would be entirely possible to do well. But it would require a keen attention to detail in terms of what elements are going to be brought in from the show,
right?
And what can be communicated in a live action kind of setting. Because I mean, you know, the the first shot that we get of the Shinigami world when the Death Note gets dropped or whatever, and you see like Ryuk for the first time, and like this kind of uplifting chorus of demonic choir members plays, and the camera work, it's doing this whole like earthquake effect through the tunnel.
Right.
You know, like you could translate that into film. I don't see why an adaptation, just because it's not an anime, I don't see why that same tone and presentation can't be recreated in some way or improved upon even, instead of just completely abandoned.
Yeah, I think I get you.
Adam Wingard, his presentation of this film is just like shitty, dumb, high school, cliched bullshit. Like high school musical with some gore, essentially.
It's pretty on the nose, yeah.
And then his throwback 80s synth soundtracks that he's been doing since forever, and make a lot of people think that his movies are more clever and self-aware than they actually are, when it's literally just that's the music he likes.
Yeah, he really did, like, emphasize that.
And as evidenced by this film, he'll throw it in wherever he can, regardless of whether or not it fits or makes sense. That's literally just what he wants to put in his movies.
Yeah.
You know?
I did notice that. There's a lot of, like, romantic lyrics in the songs, and I was like, who the fuck greenlit this for the scene? Like, this doesn't add anything. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. He really, people act surprised by how bad this film is, and they're like, how could this happen? Adam Wingard is one of the most inventive and creative directors in the filmmaking scene today. And people say that literally just based off of two of his films, You're Next and The Guest, which came out one after the other, so I guess people were like really hyped for him. I didn't think those movies were great.
I still have to see those.
You're Next is average at best, or okay at best. I wouldn't call it good.
Were those like the low-budget horror movies that he's known for kind of style?
That was a $1 million budget movie that literally just took place in like a cabin, and that's it.
It's impressive that the Death Note movie had a $40 million budget, and this is what we got.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, people act surprised when this Death Note film completely misses the point, doesn't develop any of the characters really at all, doesn't spend any time fleshing out the universe at all, spends all of its time on gore and just bullshit, shitty cliches, and that's it. And it's like, well, this is exactly how all of his other films are. I don't see why anybody's surprised. People think that he was doing it ironically in You're Next and The Guest, but it's not true. It's not ironic just because there's some subversion in the tropes that we're used to seeing.
That's giving him a lot of credit,
People
too.
look at You're Next, and they're like, because there'll be a scene where one of the characters is dying, but it's like the killer has to stab him with like 4 different knives. And he's like, oh, why won't you die? And then he like actually dies, and people are like, wow, this is ironic. But it's not ironic. It's like, this has happened in horror films before. There was somebody telling me the other day that the opening scene by itself is supposed to be an obvious clue as to the irony of the film, but there's nothing that happens in the opening scene that isn't just something that could happen in a film that's not trying to be ironic. There's nothing about it that says this is ironic. It's just really cheesy acting and really cheesy presentation. That doesn't mean that it's trying to be cheesy and bad. Perhaps part of it knows that it's cheesy and bad and it's okay with it. It's not like a commentary on the genre just because you do a couple things different, you know?
Yeah.
It's literally just a dumb slasher movie that people give way too much credit, and I will never understand. I gave it a second chance. I literally, after seeing Death Note and tweeting about it on the Friday that it came out, and I said something along the lines of Adam Wingard has never directed a good film in his life. And a lot of people obviously responded like, what about You're Next and The Guest? And it's like, I've already given these films a chance before. And, you know, I made it through You're Next, but I didn't even make it through The Guest. And so with all these people saying that and saying like, oh no, they're genre deconstruction films that are pointing out the very things that you take issue with in the film. And so I watched them again, trying as hard as I can to find where the commentary is. But there's nothing about it that's providing commentary. It's literally just, I can see how some people might think that it's ironic because it's so cheesy and dumb that you would have to think like, oh yeah, this knows, you know? But it's not the case.
Yeah.
It's literally just what it is.
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's infuriating.
This is actually my first bout of familiarity with Wingard, but from this alone, I definitely don't think I'll be contributing anything financially to him in the near future.
I gave Your Next and the Guest a second chance on Saturday, and then followed it with his Blair Witch remake. And so I had watched 4 Adam Wingard films in like 30 hours, and I think it broke me. I'm
Are you doing okay? I was about to ask, do you need to talk to someone?
I feel worse than before I tried giving him a second chance. I feel more infuriated that I wasted my time trying to find something of value in any one of his films and was left even more disappointed. It's like, now I actually finished The Guest, and it was even worse than the first 20 minutes. So...
Were you glad you stopped when you did the first time?
It was an appropriate response, and I don't see how... I mean, I was right in thinking that I wouldn't get much more out of it from that point on, as evidenced by me giving it a second chance.
Yeah. Your gut was on the money. To get away from Wingard himself...
Never.
It's constantly relevant. So first of all, Light Turner. I gotta get used to that.
Ugh!
What were your thoughts on Light just as a whole?
I'm not sure, like, a lot of what makes this interpretation so awful is also comparing it to the original. And like I said earlier, like it's important to note, like, a change in of itself is not a flaw.
Sure.
And should never be considered as such. But when every change is for the worse, and when you start out, like, your intellectual property that you're adapting into a film starts out as great source material. It starts out as having laid the groundwork for something that is successful before you even get involved. And from you to go from, like, a 9 out of 10 source material and drag it down into the ground into a 1, that requires some extra special talent. You know, that requires so much fuck up that most people couldn't do that if they tried. If we're gonna go into the characters, Light's pretty obnoxious, honestly.
Yeah.
What I'm struggling to understand is why they would get someone that looks and acts so obnoxious for the role. Like, I don't understand how that benefits the film or the character, regardless of how you're trying to portray the character.
Exactly.
I don't see how that's a benefit. I don't see how hiring an actor who can't even scream without smiling.
I noticed that. I was watching the first 10 minutes when I was waiting for you to figure out your audio thing, and I was like, he's screaming, but he looks like he's having fun.
Exactly. Like, you can't even get a half-decent take out of him. It takes you out of the film. Like, perhaps Adam Wingard was playing the scene for a laugh. Who knows, right?
Wouldn't that be convenient?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he runs like a fucking schmutz. Like, that was something that they seem to be really proud of, is the way that Lakeith and Wolf both run. Is that, like, oh, he kept saying in interviews, Wolf has this, he's like flailing and he's running, and then Lakeith has like this Terminator like 1000 run to him, and I was like, that's not a fucking good thing.
Exactly, like, that reminds me of the interviews for After Earth. They were saying the exact same thing.
The professional fucking run.
They're like, we gave him a superhero run. When that's as far as your detail goes in terms of fleshing out the characters, I think that speaks for itself.
And just as an interlude, everyone likes to think that they're super crazy. I should ask first, have you seen any of the interviews with Lakeith?
No.
He fucking wears like some weird sort of pantyhose on his head. He wears like these fucking...
Is that the L guy?
Yeah, the guy who plays L. He was also like one of the characters in Get Out. I guess, he's probably got some talent.
Oh yeah, he had the hat.
Yeah, that was him. I still haven't seen that, but from what I saw of the pictures, I hear it's really good. It looked like he was just kind of a minor character in that movie.
He was an important character that didn't have much screen time.
Right, like he was pivotal to like the central plot from what I saw.
Yeah, without spoiling anything, I guess.
Yeah. But I was gonna say that, yeah, in all these interviews, I can send them to you after just so you can have a nice, good old-fashioned cringe, is he was trying to act like L. He was, people kept giving him credit. Oh, he's in character in the interview. It's so great. It's just like, and, you see that he will cite Heath Ledger as one of his biggest inspirations, and it's clear that he's kind of trying to take after him in that sense, yeah.
Because before you even said anything, I was going to say that Heath Ledger kind of started this trend. Him and like Daniel Day-Lewis, and a lot of really talented people working in the industry that would force themselves to stay in character even when they're not recording, just for their own personal gain. And somehow that turned from, hey, here are some really talented people in the industry that are taking their job seriously, into, hey, here's how you market the film to make people think it's going to be well acted. Because studios took note of that, and they saw how people responded to interviews like Heath Ledger, and I'm sure Daniel Day-Lewis, and there's a bunch of other actors that I just can't think of off the top of my head. But there started a trend where studios could see how positively people were receiving that. And then, how every second article that came out about Suicide Squad when it was in production was like, Jared Leto hid condoms in his actors' lunchboxes.
So quirky, perfect for the role.
Because he's crazy. He's always in character. It's just really lame.
Like that fucking counts towards
half-assed
anything.
Pranks.
Yeah.
It's like non-pranks. Like the Mad Lads subreddit.
Yeah, I'll show you, I'm actually not familiar with that subreddit.
It's exactly what I'm talking about.
I'll show you after this. You can check it out for yourself, but they're very uncomfortable to watch. Remember in the anime when the first time that L had any kind of, I'm not sure when's the last time you watched the anime, but you can probably remember the first time that L.
It's been many years, but I can probably remember.
Yeah, there's that scene where L
3 times, I think.
Yeah, I'm a pretty huge fanboy of Death Note, honestly. So it's taking a lot of restraint to give this film a neutral sort of like, let's examine both sides view, because I just want to shit all over it.
It's worth shitting on.
It is. But I'm one of those people that's like, oh, hold on, let's hear the other side, as weak as it might be. Just to appease.
Oh yeah, I want to hear the other side too.
Yeah.
But I imagine I'll have very strong disagreements.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, is I can't imagine it'll change much of my opinion.
Is like, yeah, I want like every argument that your friend gave to you as to why it's not so bad. I want to hear every single one of them.
Yeah, I'll send it to you when we're done.
Because I have just as legitimate reasons as to why I didn't feel as though those points really improve the film.
God, if I got you guys on like a call together, that would probably be like 3 hours, and you'd never reach a consensus, because he's very adamant about his opinions, and he never changes his mind. But I digress. Yeah, so in this interview, I keep shifting subjects. So in the original Death Note, when L, the first time you actually saw L give a genuine emotional response to anything, because, he's so calculated and emotionless and robotic, was when he saw that Light had one of the prisoners write in their own blood on the wall, L, did you know that gods of death love apples? Mm-hmm. And his first response was, Shinigami, what the fuck? And he threw his arms up and just went, ah! And everyone looked at him, and then he quickly gathered himself. In an interview with Lakeith, he was pointing at the Death Note, and he's like, oh yeah, something Shinigami, said the interviewer, and he just said, don't talk about Shinigami!
Oh no.
Yeah, and he was playing it off like, you couldn't tell if he was having fun, he was being silly, or if he really believed, I am L, this is how L would act. It was very uncomfortable. And then when he was with the other actors, he was in character, he was kind of kneeled up in the fetal position almost. He wouldn't wear shoes, because, get it guys, L doesn't like fucking wearing shoes. Every other actor they were just themselves, because they're not massive stuck-up cunts. I mean, I don't know Lakeith, but I find that the whole thing really obnoxious if it's not done well and if it's not a good character in a good movie.
Wow.
And everyone else was just staring at him like, they were all smiling to be polite, but you could tell some of them were just kind of like, this fucking douchebag.
I have a feeling like Nat Wolff wasn't really putting on much of a character at all, so maybe he was in the interviews. Who knows?
Himself.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe he was constantly a light turner in the interviews, but you would never tell.
There was actually one interview he did with fucking Al Roker, whatever that show is. I don't watch it. but that whole morning interview thing. He was saying to them, "Oh, there was a time where I had to scream, and I was wondering whether I should do like my cinematic scream, or if I should do my real scream, which is more like ah." And then they're like, "Which one did you do?" He's like, "I did my real scream," and I was like, "Oh, fucking thank God you did."
Ugh, I'm cringing that he was smiling the entire time, and I still have that in my head. Like,
because like the whole scene was like shot okay. I mean, granted I'm totally green when it comes to my knowledge of all cinematic stuff.
Not shot okay.
Yeah,
but
it managed to. I thought of it, and I was like, oh, that was how'd they do that? I mean, I'm sure it was just a rope pulling on the fucking desk, but I was just like, oh, this is kind of cool.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing special at all.
Yeah.
In terms of filmmaking in this, and there never has been in any Adam Wingard film ever. So everybody should stop acting surprised. There's literally never been any piece of impressive filmmaking at all, whatsoever. He's done gore. He has got good gore. That's it. That's not really filmmaking. That's props.
I saw one of the interviews that I downloaded and put into Premiere, and I haven't watched it yet, but it was just called like Adam Wingard How to Make a Horror Film like on a Budget, and I just thought to myself, oh, I'm sure there'll be a lot of fucking gems in this one.
Yeah, that's what he knows. He's been doing the same thing forever, just in slightly different ways, and all of a sudden people think it's bad now. Well, buckle up, children. You're about to witness every other film in his entire career being bad from this point onward, and wonder, why isn't he making good movies anymore? It's because he never was.
I noticed that every time Elle was on screen, in the show, Elle is arguably, and I'm not one of those people that just necessarily throws this word around as a meme, but he's in the show, he's essentially autistic, and he's not even high functioning autistic, because he can't dress himself, he can't get around, he can't really function without Watari and other people helping him out with just his day-to-day routine and this and that. In the movie, he just seemed more like eccentric in an obnoxious sort of like self-absorbed way than any sort of like genius,
Exactly. I mean, this is just one more example of the film being in conflict with itself. Like, ignore the source material, but you're taking parts of the source material and then adding them in with the new parts you've added. And it's fine if you want to change parts, but the parts you've changed are now at conflict with the other halves of this character, The character, the presentation, the story, every part about it. It's like the changes that were made were not just different, they were changes that inevitably had contradictions with other parts of the film or other parts of the story that they're supposedly trying to set up.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess just before I get into Elle, I'll just say one more thing about Light Turner.
I still love that they went with Turner, like Johnson or Williams or anything. Yeah, Smith. Like, anything could have been, better. But Turner immediately invokes the image of Fairly Odd Parents.
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Yeah, I mean, not only was having him become the I'm bullied character not a change that was made for the better at all, and I don't understand how Adam Wingard all of a sudden thinks like, oh yeah, let's make it more stereotypical and cliched. That's totally great,
Yeah.
But did anybody, I'm sure a lot of people felt this way, just how embarrassingly written the whole scene was when he was like, if you beat me up, that's technically child abuse. Like, yeah. What do we get out of him saying something so stupid and obnoxious?
And I like that it didn't even work out for him, because after the fact, like, Mia just told the principal, like, oh yeah, he's a dumbass, and he walked into a pole. That's why he got, beat up. Like, she didn't even appreciate it.
And again, another example just of Light's character being at odds with himself in terms of consistency is, they changed him into this completely obnoxious, annoying, wimpy, just all around not a pleasant or relatable character at all. And then in terms of the moral ambiguity of what he does as a character in the actual story, they completely stripped away all of the moral ambiguity and had it so that he only kills people in supposedly ethical ways. Like, everybody he kills in the film is just somebody who was either a criminal or a bully, or like, there was some sense of whether they were trying to have this happen or not, there was some sense of quote-unquote justice in literally every death he was responsible for. And it's like, okay, that's fine, I guess, if this is the movie you want to make. But that takes away everything that was interesting about his character in the anime. It's you had something.
Yeah.
And it's clear to literally every fan of the show why it works. And you, Adam Wingard, decided, nah, let's take away everything that made it work and replace it with bullshit.
He essentially admitted in interviews with, I don't even remember the publication, some website, but he essentially admitted that Light is just a fucking dumbass typical American kid, because he said, oh, you know, he's seen on the news that ISIS is bad, so he kills a bunch of ISIS people. He knows that North Korea, he read somewhere, actual wording, he read somewhere that North Korea is, you know, responsible for a lot of bad shit, so he killed the North Korean general. And so it's kind of like he admitted himself that, yeah, I wrote a shitty character, but that was intentional because this is more... And my friend had a good point. He said, in Japan, you have a lot more of those societal expectations of, like, be perfect, go to cram school, you know, do this with your family, you know, collectivism, etc. And then in the American version, he's just this shitty, stupid punk kid that takes everything out on his dad and, you know, doesn't respect all the things he's sacrificed for him. And it was just an embarrassment.
Moving the story to America doesn't warrant that type of change to be made. Otherwise, there's an implication as though that kind of straight-A student doesn't exist in America, as though there's no such thing as that. Like, what... There's things about the character in the original that work, and it's plain, it's clear as day to everybody who's ever enjoyed the show what makes it work and why the character is interesting. What do you gain? What do you benefit from in completely gutting everything that was objectively responsible for the original's success? Why do you hate the things about it that are the only reason anybody liked it?
Yeah.
Unless you're a fucking idiot.
the thing about the anime that made it so fucking good is that, first of all, you know, I'm straight as hell, mostly, you know, I'm kind of bi, but, like, Light's hot. Like, Light's just fucking easy on the eyes. He may look like, Zac Efron, was it, right? High School Musical, whatever.
Yeah.
Am I thinking of a different Zac? And he looks really nice, so immediately you have that, I was a psychology major, and we learned in psychology classes, and I think it's kind of a commonly accepted fact that attractive people are much less likely to be judged negatively. They're much more likely to be credited
that's a
as,
part
like,
of it.
oh no, he wouldn't murder someone, he's hot.
Exactly. And
so that's why it worked with Light. And then on top of that, he's just sociopathic. And the only time, since we're still talking about Light, the only time that he ever expressed interest in any girl was, like, Yuri, I believe was her name, the girl in the bus that he pretended to go on a date so that he could expose Ray Pember for... Yeah.
He was a complete social manipulator.
Yeah, and with Misa, he just started dating her, number one, to to be like, shut the fuck up, you're gonna blow my cover, you're really tactless about this whole making public announcements as Kira thing. And then on top of that, hey, you have the Shinigami eyes, I could fucking use you to kill L, like my biggest enemy. He may as well not have a dick at all, because he doesn't use it, he's only interested in just, manipulating people. And so then as soon as you throw romance into the plot, it's like, this goes against absolutely everything that the character stood for in the show. Like, he's almost too smart to even be thinking about temptations of the loins. You know, it would
be one thing if Light had a romantic interest in the film. It's another thing entirely to have the romantic interest be a plot device.
Yeah.
And that's literally the only reason why she's there in this film, is to fill the female interest gender quota, and to literally just have her be used as a plot device for conflict, not just for conflict, but also to absolve our main character of any kind of perceived wrongdoing that people might think throughout the entire film.
I also, we can talk about her separately, but I just want to ask now, was it just, maybe I'm being too hard, was it just me, or did Mia... Her actress reminded me a lot of Bella from the Twilight series in terms of, like, emotional range and energy. Maybe that was how she was written or something, but I kept thinking of Bella.
Yeah, I mean, That's another thing that is Kristen Stewart. People keep suggesting as though she's great. And I didn't really watch much of the Twilight films at all. I kind of just, ignored them. And now with her, like, diversifying and going into films and trying to legitimize herself, she was in Clouds of Sils Maria, and she won, like, the French equivalent of an Academy Award for that movie, and everybody's talking about how great she is. But I watched the film, and not only is it just, like, one of the most painfully boring movies to sit through, but her performance in that movie, and literally every movie I've seen her in, is exactly what I would have imagined she would be like in Twilight. When I didn't really watch Twilight, and all I heard from people saying is like, she just mumbles everything, and she only has like one face the entire, like, very narrow range of emotion. And then that's what I hear about people saying for Twilight, and then I see her in every other movie, and that's exactly what she's doing. And all I'm thinking is like, is this different than what happened in Twilight? Do I have to watch all of the Twilight movies to...
You pretty much got the full experience.
Like, would she be worse in those movies? Anyway, I'm so confused why people think she's a good actor. Robert Pattinson really impressed me in the film that's out in theaters right now, Good Time. Would highly recommend that movie.
I'll have to see that. Honestly, I mean, like I said, I'm pretty new to... I'm not really much of a movie guy just because I have the worst attention span ever. And I fucking hate going to the actual movies because of all the people there. I'm not terribly familiar, but I would even say I unfortunately dated a girl for a little while that was a big Twilight fan, and that was one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. And she had me watch a little bit of the movie, and Robert Pattinson was okay in those movies for the limited whatever he had to do. But I wouldn't doubt that he's actually pretty talented.
He's been doing a better job at proving himself than Kristen Stewart, in my opinion, and yet she's the one with a French Academy Award for some reason. Clouds of Sils Maria was actual garbage, and people love it. It's like Criterion. It's like highly regarded. Anyway, I'm gonna piss. I'll be right back. All right.
I did want to say there was like some article on the same website I was mentioning before where they were like, how Netflix saved the Death Note movie adaptation, and there were just a bunch of comments that just said, I wish it didn't. I wish it just fucking let it die.
Is that an article from before the film was released?
I think it was like a month before it released, but this was after all the teasers came out and everyone already could see that it was going to be a fucking rolling dumpster fire.
Yeah, speaking of which, it became abundantly clear to me once I had watched the film why they had left Ryuk's design so intentionally ambiguous in the marketing. And that's because he looks fucking stupid.
I think there were some parts where he looked kind of cool. I liked his eyes, but I think it's an improvement from I'm not sure if you saw the Japanese movie, live-action movie.
I disagree. And I think the Japanese movie was bad, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But Ryuk's design there, although, he could have looked more quote-unquote realistic, there's nothing, like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That was a truer adaptation of his design than this film, for sure.
Yeah.
And again, if you're gonna make changes, make them for the better, or don't change it. What does giving him an ugly fat face do? What is that for? His face used to be like whitish gray. It looked cool. Like he had an interesting, attractive design to him in like a demon kind of way,
Yeah.
And now he just looks stupid. Also, his purpose as a character in the narrative is completely gutted once more. Like in the anime, part of what made Light and Ryuk's dynamic so interesting is because over time you kind of saw the Shinigami over time is more humanized, and his reactions to the sociopathy of Light is like, wow, this human sure is nuts, and you understand that Ryuk almost seems to have his own set of moral guidelines in a sense,
Yeah, like the idea that you would have a Shinigami look at the person you just give the death note to, and have this, you know, when he's like, oh no, actually it's good that I met you, Ryuk. I've been waiting for you. And then Ryuk's response in the sub was just,
oh yeah, he's
you could tell
taken
he's
aback
like, oh
by
fuck,
this human individual.
Yeah, he's like, this might actually be a bit of a mistake.
Yeah, and well, I mean, even so, I mean, like he would repeat that he was bored and that he just wanted to find something interesting. But through that, we saw just how unique of a character Light is, and, you know, this death god that has presumably done this thing many, many times is now acting as though he's never seen such a thing before. And that this is a very rare and unique experience for him to see an individual human being react in that way, or use the death note in the way that Light started using it, or evade being caught, etc., etc. Light as a character, in contrast, became almost less humanized as the series went on. He became more of a monster. And so there's like a really interesting juxtaposition happening between these two characters, and they kind of played off of each other in a really entertaining way, so that when Light isn't interacting with other characters, you still get interesting dialogue scenes between him and Ryuk, and it also moves the plot forward, where Light explains what he's going to do, and does it in kind of a really egocentric kind of way, where he's proud of himself and he wants to share his genius, but he doesn't want to get caught, so he shares his genius with the death god.
Right. Who's kind of forced to listen to him anyway.
To kind of brag about his own intellect and planning. All of that completely lost. Again, fine if you want to make a change, but you should be making changes for the better, not for the worse. And again, ignore the source material. Let's pretend the source material didn't exist. If this was the first incarnation of anything Death Note, the manga didn't exist, the anime didn't exist, and this was just a new thing, my first question would be, what fucking purpose does Ryuk serve in this story? Why is he even there? Like, if you're gonna strip away the point of him being there and have him be completely useless to the story, then why even have him in it at all? If you're gonna be like, fuck, like, strip away every reason he had to be there, why even include him at all? Like, your film is not even consistent with itself. It doesn't even understand what it's trying to do. Yeah, it's at constant odds with itself. The only thing Ryuk accomplished in the story was to have Light think that he killed some people independently when it was actually Misa or whatever. And that's literally the only time he came into play in the story at all. Otherwise, he was literally just a little devil on your shoulder, like, heh.
I feel like that's the extent of their understanding of what Ryuk was about, because if you really think about it, like in the show, he's like chaotic neutral. He doesn't give a fuck. He literally let the Death Note land wherever it wanted, and Light just happened to find it. But in the movie, it literally dropped at Light's feet, as if to say, you're the chosen one, and then he was kind of coaxing him, come on,
take it. You know you wanna.
Oh, it'll be fun. Like, just all this bullshit. And, it really did seem like Ryuk was just there out of obligation. Oh, because the fans are going to want to see him. And obviously for the marketing purposes. That's the one criticism my friend gave it, was that they did a shit job marketing it. He said you should go, I still haven't looked at it, but he said you should go look at the Ryuk Twitter handle, because apparently it's just like, spoopy, apples and spoopy. And that was like the deepest part. Yeah, that was apparently the deepest understanding they had of Ryuk. But in the show, he was just like, you could tell the whole time he didn't give a shit. He wasn't on anyone's side. When L exposed him by having him kill the convicted prisoner Lindell Taylor, and Light actually got kind of butthurt about it. Ryuk was cackling the whole time, like, oh, this motherfucker got you, dude. Like, he literally had no dog in any fight. He was just bored.
Yeah, he was there for the entertainment.
Yeah.
It's to completely miss the point of any aspect and every aspect of the source material to such a degree that Adam Wingard has consistently done now, is to suggest that when he's watching something like the original Blair Witch or the Death Note anime, when he's watching something, he doesn't even like he is literally incapable of appreciating it in the same level like an average fan would. He is somehow below that level where him making a successor that has the same title, that's in the same universe, and that is supposedly trying to market itself to fans of the original. Somehow, all he got out of Death Note was, there's a Death Note, and this kid named Light kills people with it, and that's it. Like he apparently he watched all of the death scenes and just jerked off to those only, and thought, we'll make this better. Let's add some Final Destination shit. Like, how can you even carry it over?
Yeah.
And pretend as though every aspect that made it successful in the first place doesn't exist. It's the fact that he didn't even know they were there. He is literally that inept at perceiving story and characters in a film that this is what he thinks made the film special. This is his honest attempt at carrying it over into the next incarnation of the franchise. This is his honest attempt, and it's just it's pathetic and embarrassing.
Yeah. By the way, that's the Twitter of Ryuk, which is probably handled by Wingard himself. Just take a gander at that, because it seems this is just like the most surface level understanding possible of what Ryuk's character is.
Yeah. It's to see that this is what they apparently got out of the original is just, it makes me feel bad for them, because you will literally never appreciate the story and characters as much as just an average fan would. Like, you are so far below the level of comprehension as to what worked and didn't work and what made the original special that I can't even believe that you actually enjoyed or appreciated it, Like, perhaps Adam Wingard was a fan of the original, but if he was, which I would even be skeptical of, then all he got out of it was like, people died, death good in movie, and that's it.
Oh, what was the fucking funniest thing? I was watching, they had like a Comic-Con interview with the whole cast, right? And I feel bad for that Asian guy that was in Heroes, I forget his name, but he actually is like a fan of the series. He's a self-proclaimed otaku. And, that motherfucker is like more famous and more talented than everyone. Like, obviously Dafoe wasn't there, so otherwise that would have kind of canceled that, but he was and he was just Green Goblin the whole movie. Hey, Light, what are you doing? And anyway, Wolf, so this person came up and just said, how scary is Death Note? And there was like a pause, as if they were kind of trying to think, okay, how can we like lie by omission? And Wolf said verbatim, ooh, I had to look away a lot. And I thought, probably not for the reasons that you're leading us to believe.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that when Lakeith was cast as L, he went in, he read all the manga, he watched the anime, at least so he claims, I don't know if he's telling entirely the truth, but he said that he went in and became fucking obsessed with L. And, he's a great character, he's really eccentric, there's no other character like him that I can think of in media.
I'm sure he had a lot of fun playing him, but I'm not sure he interpreted the character correctly, if that's what he was trying to do, was
especially when he had emotional bouts of anger.
Gun-wielding, crying, like, okay, yeah. Like
needing to be sung to sleep by Watsuri, like all this weird shit.
Trigger happy, emotional, not calculated in the slightest, but sometimes as long as it needs to happen in the plot. But every other, exactly. Like, again, constant conflict with itself. You're not creating something consistent. If you want to change it all the way. Don't change half of it and then have two halves of a character being the opposite of each other. You can have consistency by keeping it all the way it was, or have consistency by doing a complete 180, but all of it. So like 180 the whole character, not just half of him. Otherwise it's literally just at conflict with itself. It doesn't Doesn't make any sense.
Do you think Lakeith should be given credit? And apparently Wolf claimed that he gives kind of the typical answer, oh, I'm not really that familiar with it, but a lot of my younger cousins really liked it, and I went and I read it and I really liked it. I always doubt that whenever their performance is really shitty. It's like, did you really get it, though? Do you think that actors should get brownie points, so to speak, for really researching their character and understanding everything about them? Or do you think that's just a basic fucking job requirement?
Well, I mean, good work should go appreciated, that's for sure.
Yeah.
There are some actors that I call director dependent. Their performance, more often than not, just coincides with who is directing them in a film. And there's some actors that I consider to be director independent, where literally no matter how shit the movie is or how shit the director is, like her could be the worst actor that you've ever give the worst performance you've ever seen out of them, but there'll be one actor that, like, every film he or she is in will consistently be like, you know what? They didn't do anything wrong here, and they were the best part about this movie, despite it being a dumpster fire. So, I mean, I would have to see more of, I forget his name already, to be able to tell what kind of an actor he is.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to be director dependent. If a director or a team of filmmakers are adapting source material into their vision, they should be responsible to make sure that the actors understand what they're going for. It shouldn't be the actor's responsibility to decide exactly how they're going to play the character. There should be a collaborative effort. There should be ideas bouncing from the actor onto the filmmakers and vice versa to try and establish what they want out of it. But at the end of the day, an actor's job is to do exactly what the director tells them to do. Even if an actor decides, like, that they really, really want to do something a certain way, at the end of the day, a director can easily step in and say, I don't want you to do it this way, this is how I want you to do it. And if if they take their job seriously, they'll do it how the director says. So, in terms of characters being portrayed really poorly, I would have to put the blame in Adam Wingard. He is credited as the director. Oh, yeah. He has the most control over what the final product of the film will be. Otherwise, you should not be calling yourself a director.
Yeah, well said. What did you think of Elle as a whole?
Right before we get into Elle, I'm just gonna say one more thing about Ryuk, just before we switch. What the fuck was the point in having the apples in the film at all? Like, there was never any kind of mention of, like, death gods love apples. And as far as we could tell, there was never any kind of indication that Light was buying these apples for Ryuk. They would literally just, it was like he brought apples from the Shinigami world and like chomped them up and just left trash all over the human world for no reason.
It honestly seemed like a meme, like an attempt at a meme, because, the fans are going to expect apples. Yeah. They're going to expect Elle to eat a lot of candy.
You gotta have the apples. What did I think of Elle as a whole? He never, it was like the film insisted that he was the yin to the yang. It's like the film insisted that he was the opposite opposing force to the main character, but it never really earned any of it. Like, I was never impressed by what either of the characters was doing to try and outwit the other. There was no sense of clever tact. There was no sense of planning or manipulation or
foresight, really. Any foresight at all.
Yeah, there was zero sense of that whatsoever. And then again, I'll just ask, why even have the character there? Why not just ditch the character altogether if there's not going to be anything about the character that makes them interesting to watch? I didn't give a shit about Elle, honestly.
Yeah.
I didn't give a shit about a single character in the film. I don't know what Adam Wingard thinks we're supposed to get out of his character, or watching him in the film, or watching the character in the universe, I'm struggling to understand what he thinks anyone should have or could have gotten out of that character. Let alone any of the characters. I mean, like everything was garbage. But
yeah,
if we're talking about Elle specifically, it's like there was nothing interesting about him, and they were insisting upon that type of reaction from people as though simply just carrying over the same character name from the previous work would somehow instill that in people. But again, they apparently watched the original and didn't even understand any fucking thing about what made people feel those emotions. All they got was like, this is what people will think of Elle, but they don't do anything in the film to make people have that emotional reaction or that interpretation of the character. It's literally just saying, this is how you're supposed to feel, but it doesn't do anything to earn it. And they set up these characters in a way where it's clear that you're supposed to be thinking of them in similar ways to the original, and yet they do nothing to earn it.
Yeah. I like the moment, and I mean, I'm trying not to draw comparisons, but like you said, how the fuck can you completely avoid it when it's obviously supposed to be compared to the source material?
If it doesn't want to be compared to the source material, then don't make a fucking Death Note movie.
Note?
Make something new. make something different.
If you said inspired by Death Note, like, people would have given this a much greater pass if you just used different characters.
Change the title. If you wanted to, if you were really interested in making a film set in the Death Note universe and having a different take on it, like drastically different, where it literally ruins everything special about it, then why not just say, hey, market it as a film in the Death Note universe and call it something different. Just call it like the next character name or something, you know? Fucking start later in the timeline. We'll have like Mello and Nier and bullshit or whatever. I don't care.
A lot of people have been telling me, and I think I agree with it, if they had made this a mini-series, it could have been more salvageable, but I think because they tried to pack it into an hour and 20 minutes. No, not from Adam Wingard. But it would have been, even from Adam Wingard, it still would have been marginally better as a miniseries rather than just cramming it all into a movie.
Like, okay, well, I guess if you're gonna say marginally better, then sure, I guess I can't disagree with that.
I use marginally
very few places
literally.
You could go other than up from where this current film sits.
He keeps talking about, oh, maybe we can get a sequel. I'm thinking, in what fucking universe did you leave any room at the end of that for a sequel?
Because Light's still alive. He's a good guy. I think they're going to try and do a sequel. I genuinely think they're going to try.
I really hope they don't, because then I'll have to fucking watch it and shit on it again. And time's better spent on other things. In all the interviews that I read with Wingard, he was really obsessed with the idea of the Death Note's ability to control people's minds, and I think he went a little too gung-ho with that, especially in reference to Watari just completely turning his back against Elle just to help Light. Like, it's just, it doesn't make for an interesting premise just to be able to have complete control over people's mind. Like, you know, with Ray Pember's fiance, where he got her name and then wrote her name down. And he's like, oh, by the way, I'm Kira. And she walked away. And he had her specifically hide her body. Mm-hmm. Like, even in the, if you're familiar with How to Read 13, it's like a trivia final manga chapter.
Sure. I have no idea.
It's pretty cool. It's like 400 pages of just extra shit you might not have known. They said that Light used the whole Death Note's mind control aspect of it to make sure that she hid herself. She killed herself in such a discreet way and hid her body so well.
Yeah, her body would never be found,
Yeah, so even in, like, the actual, you know, you go to wikis and it says, like, status, deceased. It's just she's listed as missing. Like, they still never found her to the end of the series, so that's interesting.
That's crazy. He should do that with everybody.
Yeah, you really should. One thing that my friend pointed out that, and we can get back to Elle in just a sec, but one thing my friend pointed out that I thought was kind of interesting is that he liked the detail of dealer's choice, so to speak, in that, and I don't know if I agree, I thought it was, you know, sufficient that just by writing their name, it would just do a heart attack, because then that became the main indicator of this was an attack from Kira. It was just like 100 heart attacks at once. He liked that Ryuk could just have his own, he could have his fun with it. He could just fuck around and decide, oh, you know, I'm gonna have this guy get decapitated, or I'm gonna have him poison himself accidentally or something.
Few issues with that.
Go for it.
It takes all of the way that they've added that into Ryuk's character, along with every other change they made to Ryuk's character, takes all of the responsibility off of Light and implies that I mean, they even hinted at it before the twist or whatever, that Light isn't really responsible for any of this, and that Ryuk is essentially like twisting his arm, and this, you know, Light's kind of like a victim of circumstance in a way. The way that they had these stupid Final Destination deaths, which, by the way, you don't get decapitated like that from a ladder, first of all.
I was thinking that.
That was stupid.
The force it would have required.
Second, it takes away everything personal about it. You know, the heart attack worked so well in the anime because you weren't left with a spectacle of blood and gore and confetti. You were left with watching a person die. And that's as simple as it was. And sure, there's room for more elaborate deaths, and the series perfectly utilized that when it was appropriate. But the whole point of people dying from the Death Note is not like, man, blood and gore is really cool. I love watching people die because I'm a horror movie fetishist and this is how I jerk off. It was about the choices. It was about taking someone's life. It's about the morality. And as soon as you, as a director or as filmmakers adapting the anime into a film, decide that the morality is not important, they gutted all aspects of moral ambiguity. The character choices are not important. You're literally just throwing on a display of Final Destination bullshit. And that's it. And you're literally telling the audience, this is what's important about the film, is the blood and gore, and nothing about the characters, nothing about the story. You know, that's it. And it really just shows where his priorities are. And they always have been.
Once you factor in that Wingard is, you know, like you had pointed out, like a low-budget horror director, that really kind of explains why there's an emphasis on gore and spoopy things.
And yet he couldn't even do a half-decent adaptation of Blair Witch. More is less when it comes to found footage, you know? He doesn't even understand. He doesn't understand anything. He literally doesn't have a fucking clue why the first Blair Witch movie was good. He doesn't even understand anything about it.
Like, I'm not even really that familiar with the found footage genre as a whole, but I did watch your video on Rec, or, you know, Record, as you put it. And that was honestly kind of my first foray into that genre, and you really illustrate your points well in that video. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Is there anything else you want to say on that, or did you want to get back to L?
On the topic of, I guess what was the general topic?
Ryuk in general. Like, just Ryuk's character, if you had anything else you wanted to say about that.
Not really. We kind of got into L a little. I'm not really sure how much more there is to say about him, because he's just a really... Every character in this film is unspecial and cliched and stereotypical. Nothing personal about them. Nothing interesting about them. You know, that's as far as it goes. Like,
yeah.
Light's dad character was annoying, stereotypical dad, American movie dad, the bullied kid. It's embarrassing. It's bullshit. It's trash.
I feel bad because, I mean, like, you're giving really good answers, but I can feel your fucking anguish in between your answers. Just fucking having to think about this shit again.
Yeah. If I'm gonna rant about something, I usually have some sort of...
No, absolutely. This is great. You're giving me everything I was hoping for. Because, yeah, I mean, there isn't really that much to say about a lot of the characters, but just with, if you can recall what made L interesting, because the cool thing about the anime was that L was fucking ballsy while still having a plan. You know, he comes up to Light and he's just like, oh, hey, I'm, you know, essentially, hey, I'm Quentin Tarantino, whatever the American equivalent would be. And it's like, I know you're not him because you're clearly not a model. You're just using a celebrity name as a cover. He's like, I can't kill you because you clearly did this on purpose strategically, knowing that if you died afterwards, then bam, it's me. And so then after that, he had to do this long con of, sure, let's play tennis. Yeah, you know what? Let's go get some food. Let's play some chess. And then eventually it gets to the point where they're actually becoming friends. And he tells Light, like, you know, I've never actually had a friend before. Like, you're the first person. Almost like that would create like a moral conflict for Light. But then it shows that, you know, Light's still a piece of shit, as he was from the very beginning. and he kills him anyway without any remorse because that was the whole end goal. And it's, you know, there was a lot of development there. There was a reason to love. You didn't have to like Light because he was still a sociopath and, you know, the biggest anti-hero, but it was pretty much between either L or Light. Who's your favorite? Most people chose L. And it helped that they humanized him, and they really gave him this sense of affection. Like, you got the idea that he was this small person, that despite his prodigal position in society and his legendary status, he was just a sad, fucking socially awkward weirdo that really just wanted a friend. And that made him so endearing. And then in the movie, he's just this ballsy, brash, rude, you know, tactless person that's so focused on justice that even though he's, you know, completely morally opposed to murder, and that's the whole reason why he hates Kira so much, and then he's like, no, you know what, fuck it, I'm gonna shoot you with this super high-powered Tron fucking pistol that I just happen to have.
That was dumb.
You know, because action.
Also, when he pointed it at the Ferris wheel operator and they acted as though they were in any danger, I'm sorry, but if somebody pointed a plastic fucking Buzz Lightyear gun at me, especially at a fucking fair carnival setting, I wouldn't feel threatened at all. I would assume it's a toy. I wouldn't be like, oh, don't shoot. Like, Light didn't shoot it until after the guy was taking it seriously. That was dumb.
And frankly, if I was working as a carny, I'd probably be like, you know what, dude, just fucking pull the trigger at this point. Like, why not?
Yeah. Well, what made L special to me, watching the anime, is that he served a legitimate purpose. He was legitimately the opposing force in the anime. There was a real sense of power conflict. There was a real sense of, like, cat and mouse. There was a sense of him getting the upper hand or Light getting the upper hand, and you wouldn't know who would at any given time or how it would play out, because they're both equally, they're like made for each other. They're the yin and yang of the universe.
Yeah.
Yin and yang, whatever. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
Whereas in the film, Light just kind of walked all over him. Like, there was no point in the film where it felt like L had the upper hand. Like, that TV broadcast was a glimpse into what could have turned into something interesting, I guess. And again, it's literally just a very embarrassing attempt at rehashing a plot point from the original. It's going to be worse in every way, but whatever. There was never any sense that he belonged in the story. He could have been replaced by some fucking dweeb lieutenant or something. Like, he could have been anybody. There was no reason for him to exist in the story.
Yeah, like the FBI could have collectively been chasing him.
Yeah, exactly. Like, L didn't need to be there. He didn't serve a purpose. He didn't bring anything to the narrative or the setup of the characters in the universe. There was nothing that was added by his presence there. Literally nothing. Yeah, it's just he was the character that would figure things out before other characters would, but that's about it. There was nothing about him where you could understand why he would be the one to figure it out, or why he's so passionate at trying to catch this other force.
Yeah. It was just like I said with Ryuk, it was like obligatory because he was in the anime. Remember, you all liked L. If we market that L's in this movie, you're gonna watch it.
That's what it felt like for everything in the film. Like, every character, it's like, well, we don't want to do the same thing again at all in any way that would... We don't want to carry over anything that made the original successful, but we have to include the bare minimum of things that will just be as, like, essentially pop culture references to the original. Like, what's the point, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I was thinking, not to go back to Ryuk, but just in relation to what you said, the whole thing about the apples, like, it pretty much was just like a meme to just
Exactly.
remind people, hey, you know, you remember the apple? And that's the thing. In the anime, it was incidental, because it was just, oh, hey, Light, by the way, me, your mother, I brought you these apples that our neighbor was growing. Do you want some? And he's like, fuck it, sure. And then Ryuk has one, and he's like, oh, fucking juicy. And that was just this coincidence that was like, oh, that's kind of funny. That just happened to be an endearing thing about him that kept him. It's funny. He's a Grim Reaper. He's this god of death. He's supposed to be incredibly intimidating, and here he is wolfing down apples like a little child in a candy shop. It's funny. And in the, in the movie, he just rolls it over by the door, and then, whoa, jump scare.
Yeah, you saw apples appear as a foreboding way to indicate that the character's around, and that's it.
Yeah.
There was no point to anything. There was not... Everything that appeared in the film did not benefit the film.
Yeah.
And if they had just spent, like, a little bit more time trying to understand why any of these things appeared in the anime, then they would be able to carry over what made these things special or what made these things work.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're not gonna it applies throughout almost literally every aspect in the film. Is just if you're not going to carry over what makes it work, why carry it over at all? There's no point.
It couldn't have been more obvious that it was essentially a fan service because, in the scene where he's in detention, it just starts off with a zoom from the apple on his desk and zooms out as if to say, ooh, Ryuk's coming. You excited to see Ryuk? He's coming.
Yeah, like, gonna be some fucking dude bros cheering in the audience, like, every time one of those things shows up in Star Wars Episode 7 as a nod to the original franchises. Yeah. Like all these nerd bros going, woo! Just won't shut up.
Yeah, by the way, thank you so fucking much for saying that in your Force Awakens review, because that's one of the most annoying, I think it was Force Awakens, that was the most annoying aspect of Star Wars that literally to this day has prevented me from getting into the series, is that it's this culture of fucking dude bro assholes that ruin it for everyone else. It's like, I would tell people I'm not really a fan of Star Wars, and they would say, why? And it's like, because of fucking what you just said, the way you're acting right now. I'm okay to not like it.
Exactly. The nerd bros.
Yeah.
It's like, not nerdy enough not to be part bro, but not broy enough to be like a bro in of itself without the nerd aspect. It's like the halfway point.
Like thinking that fantasy football is still like a manly hobby, but it's like you're fucking may as well be playing Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
The thing that really stood out to me, and this is one thing that I kind of missed, was that, with Ryuk being just this sort of character that they pulled out when they needed to fill this spoopy quota. It was, in the anime, he would need apples, and then during that time when the FBI, or, ICPU, bugged his room and was watching him with cameras, and he couldn't give him apples, and he couldn't show them, hey, look at this apple that's floating in midair and getting consumed by what exactly? That whole time, Ryuk was suffering because he suddenly started having withdrawal addictions, and that was funny. That was humanizing to Ryuk.
It was not just entertaining, but it was another aspect in which Light's character could be manipulating somebody else. Like even to a death god, he finds a way to manipulate.
Yeah, I never thought about that. That's a really
everybody
good point.
around him. Right.
It's just one more person for him to exert his dominance over.
Yeah. There's not a single character he interacts with in the series that he doesn't manipulate in some way.
Yeah, even his fucking dad.
To the best of my memory. Honestly, yeah. I can't think of a single person he interacts with that he doesn't take advantage of or try to use to his gain.
Maybe like his mom, but they don't really even have any actual interaction like that, so.
Yeah. Well, she's not useful to him, I guess.
Yeah, true.
Whereas his dad in the police force or whatever.
In regards to L, I think we got kind of everything else we wanted to say out of that, but yeah, I think with L, as far as I feel, he's really aggressive, he's really emotional, he's tactless, like we already covered all that. I think that you don't get a chance to see who he is. I think the only time they really attempt to give him any sort of endearing exposition is when they throw the fucking candy in your face. Like the scenes in the show where he's eating candy, he's eating a little piece of cake, it's cute, he's eating strawberries, he's eating fucking ham off of watermelon, I think. No, cantaloupe. He's eating a little slice of ham off of cantaloupe, and it's like, what the fuck's wrong with you? And that's funny. But in the movie, they just constantly show him. There was that one scene where they like kind of introduced his whole candy fetish. He like slams his fucking hand down on this bowl of Skittles, and it gets everywhere. And it's like, that's not something he'd do, like being messy and wasting his food.
Did you also notice how in the film, I mean, like they did this plenty of times with Light in ways that I've already explained, but they kind of stripped away L's own agency in that sense too, is I think it was Watari that was with him in the car or something.
Yeah.
But the only time where you understood why he's a sugar fiend is because of somebody else telling him, like, hey, you should eat this and you'll be, your sugar levels will be back up. And it's like, okay, you can't just carry something over and say, this is what the character does, and then not consider it to be of any importance if it's the character choosing to do it for themselves or being told to by somebody else.
Yeah.
Like that completely changes it, right?
Yeah. I never even remembered that.
You know, L in the anime was you know, he said it helps him concentrate, and he was doing it for his own benefit, even like his sitting position. These are things that he felt worked for himself, and
he's like, it raises my thinking abilities by 70%.
Yeah, and he didn't care if it looked weird to other people. He knew that this is what he should be doing to get the best out of himself and his mind and his performance out of any given moment. Whereas in the film, it's like you're just a little baby and daddy's telling you to keep your sugar levels up because you got diabetes or something. Like, what? I don't understand how they can somehow miss that one of those instances is saying a lot about a character and one of those isn't.
Yeah.
You know, like when the agency is stripped away from a character making choices for themselves, you don't really understand that much about them. And so Light's agency was stripped away. L's agency was stripped away. So what do we have? We have really bland, boring characters that we don't really understand. They just were kind of told how we're supposed to feel about them, but without seeing any sort of evidence or anything to earn how we're supposed to feel about them. And it's fucking stupid.
Yeah, like I think I was so blown away from Watari singing him some sort of irrelevant nursery rhyme to sing him to sleep, which, you know, did make him like a big crying babby. I was so blown away from that I completely forgot about the whole... Were they trying to pass it off as like, you're doing this because you're like type 1 diabetic or something?
Well, so, I mean, obviously they had to pick and choose how they were going to present things because it's adapting 37 episodes. Well, I guess not 37. I guess we'll just say like a fifth of the episodes. We'll say like 10 episodes or something maybe. I don't know how far we would have gotten in the anime since they're kind of different, but...
Honestly, probably about 13 episodes, I'd say, if I had to
estimate. Adapting a fair amount of source material into an hour and 41 minute long film. And so for them, they're like, oh, well, if I remember correctly, Watari was somebody that looked after him in like a foster care environment or with the school of gifted, blah, blah, blah. Like that was something that was explained later on.
Yeah. Whammy House, I think it was called.
Yeah, and like it was something to add to a character and so you could better understand their relationship. But if I was making a film adaptation and I didn't have time to present that in a way that would have as much effect or that would be subtle and appropriate, then I just wouldn't mention it at all. I mean, it seems what they were trying to do with the film is they were trying to quickly show that he has a caretaker kind of relationship with him, but without really getting into it, without writing anything to tell us or show us.
Yeah.
They literally just said, oh, well, since Watari is this caretaker person, let's just have him fucking nursing him for, like, a scene.
Yeah, and, like, in the fucking anime, Watari was also a trained sniper. So it's like he was, you could utilize him in so many cool ways for so many different situations. He was essentially just, you know, Batman's butler. He was basically just that character.
Yeah.
And that was really interesting. I wanted to mention, I love hearing, you know, when you go on really in depth because there's so much to say and there's so much to like
Which is
dissect
why
it.
I don't think I'm gonna make like a YMS review out of it. Is because like, I don't know. I feel like it would take up too much of my time to just be saying things that a lot of people are, well, to express the same opinion that a lot of people are already expressing. Do you know when about you're aiming to have this release?
I'm gonna try to keep it within the next week and a half. I have 2 editors who help me get stuff out pretty quickly, but with this one I kind of want the hands-on approach because I'm such a mega fan of Death Note that I think only I'll be able to do the editing justice.
Justice.
Oh, that's a good eye. I didn't even think about it. Yeah, that was one thing. Well, I went ahead and I started torrenting the like Blu-ray of Death Note because I'm fucking dirt broke right now. Otherwise, I would have bought it for sure. And there's the interviews with Brad Swale, who did Light in the English version anyway, and then I forget the voice actor, but the guy who did L, and he had this sort of Kira, we will find you. We're coming to get you. And it was just this, it's so confident, so handsome sounding. It was really good. And you have Lakeith, people just call him Keith for short.
Serious.
Yeah, very serious.
Like calculated, to the point, frank, blunt.
Yeah, like in the sub, you could tell the way that L spoke. He's like, I wish I spoke Japanese so that wasn't such garbage.
Yeah, it was calm yet confident.
Yeah, like I got the vibe that he was kind of this super, like this huge shut-in that never really even learned how to enunciate properly, and that was really interesting about him. But then they adapted it perfectly well when they dubbed it, and they made him sound like this sort of like, I'm much better than you, and let me tell you why. And that worked great for his character anyway, and it transitioned, I think, better than it would have in a Japanese culture, because I think in Japan they have a lot more of those sort of weird introverted otaku that are like, the only thing I understand is Gundam, and I want a girlfriend. And I think that's kind of what they were going for with L. I honestly thought that Soichiro, the interesting thing about him in the whole, I'll spare you with my faggy, the trivia, but in How to Read 13, they talk about like they interviewed the writers and the artists and stuff, and they said that the only good person in the entire series that's truly morally, like, unobjectionably upright is Soichiro, his dad, because he's the only one that's actually like doing things to make the world better, and everyone else is just kind of, you know, selfish or acting in self-interest.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting. I thought he transitioned like okay in the movie for what should have been like, you know, the American equivalent. I agree with you that they definitely dumbed him down. He was just really fucking stereotypical.
Yeah. Every change was to make it more bland and less personal.
Yeah.
You know,
every
change was in the direction of being more stereotypical.
So my friend pointed out, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, because I can see what my friend was saying, but I don't agree, just because of, obviously, the outcome. Mia, so clearly they just took the S out of Misa and made her way less boring. Granted, less obnoxious, but I would have taken obnoxious over boring any day, especially if, you know, she had her own Shinigami. I would have loved to see Rem in the movie. That would have been interesting, just to have, like, you know, because I was flipping through, I was flipping through 13, and I looked at the character page. I think there's about 90 characters. They literally give development to the Shinigami that you only see in, like, 2 scenes total, like the one that's sitting on a throne. He's got the gem eyes. Like, he has a backstory, too.
Yeah, it's useful, interesting information to chew on.
Yeah, and we condensed that into, like, what, 6 people?
Yeah.
You can say what you want about Mello. Almost no one likes Nier, but they were there, and they helped spice things up. Mello was fucking insane and reckless, and they had their own Shinigami that, fun fact, in the dub, you know the Shinigami that was just, like, wrapped in gauze?
Yeah.
That they kind of just bullied around, like, do this, and he was like, okay. They had... in the dub, he was voiced by the actor who did Ed and Eddie, or who did Double D from Ed and Eddie. He was just like this, oh, okay, so we're gonna kill this guy. And it was just like, it's fucking Double D. I digress. Yeah, so what was your take on Mia in general? What did you think of her? Did you think she was, like, I know the answer already, but did you think she was well developed, or did she fit into this adaptation? Like, what do you think?
She was a plot device. She was there to be a useless checkbox quota fulfillment for a stereotypical bullshit high school tween movie that is apparently also supposed to be a serious adult film. Again, constant odds and conflict with itself.
Yeah, and also, actually, sorry to stop you, but I wanted to ask, did you, before we get to that, did you also notice the blatant check marks going on in the first 10 or 15 minutes?
The exposition?
The exposition. Oh,
that's
by the way,
literally
your mom
his whole
died.
Conversation with his dad. Like, this quick conversation.
You're a cop. You should be doing something about this.
Literally all the dad was saying, like, I'm not going to let you leave this room until I get all this exposition out. Like, that's pretty much what happened, that whole scene. And then it's just like, scene's over, goodbye. Like, okay, well, you were telling me a lot of things. You were lecturing me a lot, but you didn't really develop anything.
Yeah.
It's really ham-fisted.
I was talking to Chris Reagan about this, because he, you know, you saw he tweeted out. Was it you that quoted him and said people like this exist?
Yeah, as a response to him doing the same thing to Ann Coulter, which, I mean, I don't have any issue with. I just wanted to
Right.
take the piss out of him.
No, it's funny. He's the kind of guy you can actually take it to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking to him and saying that the worst scene I can remember in terms of just pacing, and it really felt like they were trying to get out of the way, was Watsuri introduced himself to Light's dad. He literally just walked out from a room, started talking to him, and it was just like, all right, don't talk too much, we gotta go. Like, the scene's going this way, we gotta keep the pace up. And it was just like bam, 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 no time to digest what was going on. I couldn't stand it. It was just the worst. That was the worst part. But anyway, check boxes with Mia. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, they were... She felt like, as an actor and a character, her entire presentation belonged more in a shitty family channel, family movie bullshit kind of thing. She would be more appropriately fitting in the 13 Reasons Why Netflix show than this universe. Like, everybody is just... There was no character or actor that felt like they belonged there, and I guess that might just be attributed to a constant sense of confusion as to what the film is even going for in the first place. But I guess I'll elaborate on her in a bit, but I also wanted to point out, I kind of forgot to say earlier, it felt like every single actor belonged in a comedy movie.
Yeah.
Which was incredibly apparent during that first dinner conversation with his dad, which I'm pretty sure I've seen that guy in comedy movies. I don't remember his name.
Probably.
The actor who plays his dad. Then Light himself, especially with the I can't scream without smiling performance. And also I'm gonna scream super high-pitched.
And then he's like, oh, you should go ahead and kill that guy. And he goes, I don't have a pen. Hands him a pen. He goes, oh, good thing you have a pen. I was thinking, did that line add anything? You could have just stared and taken the pen. It would have been an improvement.
Yeah. It was, all dumb. Nobody felt like they belonged there.
To reinforce that point, did it strike you as kind of flippant how at the very end they showed everyone like fucking up their takes and smiling and laughing as they sort of did the credit roll? It showed like scenes that we knew from watching the movie were supposed to be serious or, in character, and it showed them like smiling and laughing, and it's just like,
yeah, that's what you do at the end of a comedy movie.
Exactly.
That's like the blooper reel at the end of Rush Hour. Like, you might as well just done that.
And it felt like they were doing that almost as sort of a deflection of like, if you have any criticism, it's because we're just dicking around and not taking it too seriously.
It had no fucking clue what it even wanted to be.
Yep.
It was at odds with itself at every moment. And that's the best way I can describe it, so I'll continue describing it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty fair.
And yeah, I mean, who is she in this film? Misa?
She's supposed to be Misa, but my friend pointed out, and I don't know if I agree with it, I started to say this earlier and I got off track, that it's effectively the idealistic Light from the first season was just Light Turner, and then the I've gone against my morals and I've killed people self-righteously just because they were in my way, even if they were actually very decent people, Light.
There wasn't a hard, abrupt shift, though. You can't...
No.
Like, I seriously doubt that there's going to be any... If they make a sequel, there's not going to be, like, a realistic transition that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that if they do make a sequel, I guess they'll have to have an abrupt cut in his morality. Maybe they'll have him have one of those epiphanies where something really convenient will happen to him and he'll be like, but this bully really deserves it or something. And then that'll just completely shift every decision from that point on. Who knows? But I mean, the whole point of his character was that part of him was always there,
Yeah. Someone on Twitter had a reference to me that they were like, I really liked Elle's character arc. And I thought, what character arc?
There was none.
Yeah, so glad I'm not the only one that thought that. But my friend had described it as Light Turner being like idealistic Light from the first season, and then you have this crazy self-righteous Light from the second season, and Mia is more or less just that, come on, do it, faggot, do it. You fucking pussy, you're not going to do it. This needs to be done. And I still don't think that's an excuse, but what do you think of that?
Just say that one more time.
That they essentially took Light's personality of the first season where he's idealistic and the second season where he's just become this monster that's everything that he hates, who kills people indiscriminately whether or not they're morally righteous people. just because he wants to. Like, he becomes his antithesis. That's supposed to be... It's like they took Light and they split him into two characters. Like, Light Turner was the good, and then Mia was the sort of devil on his shoulder.
Yeah, make things more black and white.
Yeah.
Make things, like, not interesting anymore in the slightest. Good guy is good guy, bad guy is bad guy, nothing in between, no moral ambiguity. And again, what's the fucking point of making a Death Note adaptation if you're gonna strip it away of everything that made it work?
Yeah. I think the only thing I liked that the movie did differently, in the like I said, constantly referring back to 13, they said at the very end of the series, they were going to have all of Kira's supporters at Light's tombstone, but that would have caused some conflict of, you know, how would they have known who he was, and that sort of would have taken away from the power of his sort of omnipotence. But I did sort of like the part where that guy recognized him and he's like, Kira, and he took out L. Like, the way they did it was dumb, but I liked the idea of, wouldn't it have been kind of interesting if Light ended up getting this whole army of the believers of his little cult and ended up, like, destroying the, ended up destroying the world with his cult.
You know what he could have done at that very moment?
What?
There was a gun. He could have asked that guy to shoot L. Light's fingerprints would not even be on the gun.
Yeah.
If you're gonna ask him to knock him out, you could have asked him to.
Yeah, he literally just said thanks and ran.
Tie him up. You could have done any number of things when you had realized how much power you have over these other people. But once again, they're like, they don't even want to imply that Light is in any way anything close to what could be considered by only some as a bad guy. They don't want to give him any kind of depth at all.
I think the only time they tried to even draw parallels between him in the movie and him in the anime was, you had that whole thing where, revisiting the whole bus scene where he had the guy come on and then he touched the Death Note because he thought he saw the note being passed. He's like, hey, give that to me. And then it turned out to be a piece of the Death Note. Saw Ryuk, fired a few bullets at him, ran, and got run over. That was incredibly tactful. That's something that actually could have reasonably happened with the powers that the Death Note, like, entailed. And that whole episode was designed to be like, wow, not only is, one, the Death Note really fucking cool and useful, but two, Light is a genius, and he actually can organize and orchestrate all of this. The only thing that they did that was even remote, the only time he had any remote similarities to his anime counterpart was when, it turns out I got this pedophile and this rapist to go retrieve me and retrieve the Death Note, and Mia's gonna die on the way down, and that'll take care of that, and also the Death Note will burn up so I won't die. Like, that was just the most... It's like, that was the only time he was conveniently brilliant, and it was not convincing at all because he's been an incompetent fuckwad the rest of the movie.
It was literally just a what a twist thing at the end.
I was gonna say.
Let's start writing the story from the ending and try to figure out how we're gonna get there. You know, that's why they had the whole burn the person's name within 48 hours, but you can only do it once sort of thing that they just forced in there. It was literally just so the ending could happen. And that's it. And you know, they literally create the rules of the universe and set everything up just so it can get to the stupid, dumb twist ending, because they apparently thought it was just so important to include and just so substantive and entertaining. Yeah, it's didn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's fucking awful.
Where were we right before talking about that? There's something else that I wanted to add.
You were talking about how they were, like, really black and white.
It's almost like between there and the end of...
getting one of his followers to just take the gun and shoot L.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say to kind of go in line with the bus scene in the anime. Another important thing to take in is that when there was a complicated death or a complicated sequence of events leading up to somebody's death, it wasn't just for the sake of showing variety in deaths. Like, the death wasn't the point.
Right.
It only existed as a way for Light to abuse or manipulate the rules in his favor. They were only ever complicated when it worked out for him from an advantageous perspective. Whereas in the film, it's just needlessly complicated because Adam Wingard thinks that the gore is the whole point, and that just watching a fucking Rube Goldberg machine of death is apparently what people want out of this and what makes it entertaining. But again, just missing the fucking point. What did you even watch?
The only time in the whole movie where I got like a 10% feeling of like, oh, okay, it's kind of clever, was when they were talking. When she was like, I had to kill Watari because I needed to write your name in the Death Note. You can only do it, or you can only burn one name in the Death Note or something. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess they kind of thought about that one, but not really.
It was a stupid, dumb rule that they just added in there anyway.
I was really, and I mean, I know, adaptation, it's not all going to be the same, but I was really annoyed when they took out the detail of, oh, you're going to be terrified when you see Ryu. Oh, what? I can't see him. And then it's like, oh, only the owner of the Death Note can see the Shinigami. And then for the rest of the movie, every time he's talking to Ryuk, Mia's just like, who are you talking to? It's like, bitch, we've been over this. You should know who I'm talking to at this point.
Yeah.
It was just, that was really obnoxious.
I'll be back in 1 minute. Hello.
I'm trying to think of if there's anything else we haven't touched on, because you've covered everything pretty well. I don't think there's any characters we're forgetting, are there?
If we are, that says a lot, really.
Yeah, I was going to say that too, actually. Because not that Watari was even a very important character in the show, but he came out in a trench coat looking all fucking mysterious, and he just brought out the laptop and just, I am L. And that was his cool intro.
Yeah, I mean, just in the film, everything's just so much more blatantly transparent, where even without the source material, someone who just literally shows up in the story as ham-fisted as he is, the first thing that anybody would be thinking is like, okay, well, he's expendable. You literally just showed up and he's dead shortly after.
Yeah. I think when I was kind of rewatching, I only got about 20 minutes into my second watch while I was waiting for you. I couldn't help but think that in the anime, when Light tests out the Death Note on the dude on TV, I thought they did that scene okay in the movie, but the fact that a dude just came right, like one of the cops just ran him over, like it didn't seem as plausible as, say, someone just shooting him the moment he comes out, because they all had she got away, he was there for a moment, he could have just gotten shot really quickly, but they just decided to hit him with a vehicle because, action, right?
Yeah.
Way cooler. But the scene where he's at the, in the anime, where he's at the magazine store and he sees a girl literally about to get raped on the street by a bike gang.
Yep.
Like, that's like, holy shit, this is pretty fucked up. And they're all like, all devious about it. Like, that really made them out to be, these guys are pieces of shit scum. And Light is, the justice deliverer. And that was satisfying.
Yeah, he had like baby steps into the monster that he eventually became. But
yeah, like
at
he
the
was
same
hesitant.
time, you could see that it was always there, just waiting to come out.
Yeah, and like in the movie where he just sees these bullies just kind of fucking with this girl and sort of like pushing her around and maybe getting her in a headlock or something. He looks at Ryuk and he just goes, "No." It's like, really? You're the one who's always talking about justice. What? This is a good time and you have a weapon to do it.
Come on, you should try it.
What are you, fucking fag?
Yeah. I'm looking on IMDb right now. There's a different actor credited as Ryuk. So there's two actors credited as
the guy who was
Ryuk.
in the costume.
I thought they had a picture of Willem Dafoe doing like mocap, and that's what they did at the end of the movie. So it's like, was he only there for one day just to pretend like he did it for the whole movie, or what the fuck?
I have no idea,
Who's this
but I
other
think it says a
actor?
lot. I think it says a lot that guy doesn't even have his own wiki or IMDb page, that he was just that much of an afterthought. Because everyone was excited for Willem Dafoe. I don't think anyone can really say Willem Dafoe was bad in this movie. I would just say he was a little underutilized. Because I was thinking about it.
He served no purpose.
He served no purpose. In the anime, he was walking around with, like, he was just floating because he knows no one can see him. It was cool. But then, in the movie, like, I thought it was kind of a very minor nitpick, I know. But the fact that he was sitting on Light's bed, I thought to myself, I don't think I've ever seen Ryuk sit. He's always floating, or he's always standing, like, ominously over everyone. He's so tall, and they utilize that. And then in the movie, he's just... It's almost like he's that mutant... cousin that the family doesn't want to talk about. They lock him in the attic, and he only gets to come out for apples or whatever. It felt like they really didn't... My first response, and I said this to Cammy, was it feels like they're not confident in their CG, because they kept showing him very infrequently in the shadows, so you can only really see his eyes. It felt like they didn't believe in the technology to make him look cool.
Yeah.
I can't really think of any other reason.
It was a massive failure of a film.
Yeah, pretty much says it all. Any other thoughts? Any closing thoughts? Anything that you can think of that would have made the film better, or was it just fucking doomed from the start?
I wholeheartedly believe that a Death Note film adaptation is possible in a way that could be well done.
Yeah.
If I were to make a Death Note film and I had like fucking $50 million, I don't know. I think I would try to make it like 2.5 hours just so I could properly do the original justice or have a faithful adaptation, not including everything obviously, but being able to have enough space for actual development, because if you don't develop things but you have the same general setup in terms of like, here's this character and this character and this character and this character and they're all here, it means nothing if they're not developed in any way. It means nothing if you can't articulate any reason for audience members to have that reaction. Otherwise, they're just people with the same names. I think a higher runtime could have helped with that, and obviously, I mean, if it were still Adam Wingard responsible for the adaptation, then it would have just been more boring. There's nothing that could have been improved as long as he had any involvement in the project. Because he made the movie he wanted to, and I'm sure he thinks it's fucking great. I'm sure he thinks it's like miles better than the original.
I've noticed that the only responses that he gives on Twitter,
you're trolling.
Yeah, that. But more than anything, he'll retweet endorsements. Of course he fucking will.
Oh yeah.
And he'll like them. He'll only acknowledge the positive ones, even the neutral ones that are like, I thought you did a good job for what you had, but I can understand why the fans didn't like it. He didn't even give that a like. He's just like, fucking haters, get the fuck out of here. And he just, the most butthurt director I think I've ever seen.
He wants to fabricate this reality to himself where he can pretend as though there's a significant amount of people that actually enjoyed it.
Yeah, like he's completely deluding himself.
And aren't just saying that to get a retweet from him.
That's a good point.
Honestly.
But what was the name of that director? It's like that bald, hot-headed Italian guy or something who is responsible for making all of those shitty video game movie adaptations just for
Uwe
profit.
Boll? I don't think he's Italian, though.
Oh, okay.
I don't know where he's from. I think he's German.
I can't decide which I like less, Wingard or Boll.
Well, they're both different people. I don't know. I'm not sure if I would compare them. Yeah.
Let's see. I think that pretty much covers everything, right? I don't think there's much else we could talk about. We kind of covered everything.
Yeah, if you need anything more, you can do another call at some point, I guess, but if there's just like a short thing missing.
I think I'll just go ahead and maybe do like a vocal introduction, like, oh, hey, you know, I didn't really do a whole introduction. We just kind of started talking about it, so here it is.
Yeah, go for it.
Just, I kind of hate all that YouTube, like, hey, everyone, I'm talking with fucking YMS here. You may know him from Cool Cat Save the Kids, Synecdoche, New York. Like, by the way, fucking, not to be like a weird fan or anything like that, but I'm really enjoying how that's coming along.
Thank you.
How many more parts, were you gonna do for that? Because I mean, obviously, take your time. I know that shit takes plenty of time. I'm not trying to rush you, but is there like 1 or 2, or how many more parts?
That's the real question, isn't it?
Time will tell. I think it was like you got at the end of your third video, and you're like, keep in mind we're only 15 minutes in. I was like, holy shit, this is great. But yeah, that's a really good. It's a shame because I think I looked at your Cool Cat Save the Kids video, as the internet does. That one got really big because it was really memey and hilarious and fucking bizarre. And I looked at your Synecdoche, New York, and it's like, what, 500,000 views or something like that right now?
Yeah, at this point. It's been up for a while, too.
Yeah, I hope more people see that, because that was my introduction to the movie, and even without having watched it myself, and I'm getting a lot of enjoyment out of just watching your sort of summation, that movie, just from the themes and the ideas presented, it honestly fucking chills me to my very core, because I'm thanatophobic like crazy. Like, I'm insanely scared of you know, accidentally swallowing a little bit of mouthwash and just dying, and everyone will laugh at me because my fucking, like, my death was my own fault. So it's like,
Tombstone
that movie
will say, man, what a fag.
But yeah, that is a crazy movie. I'm glad you decided to cover it, because I never would have found out about otherwise. But
awesome, glad to hear.
Yeah, but anyway, thank you very much, Adam, for fucking coming on and talking to me about this. It was a treat to hear you just go on and shit on this movie with me. So
yeah,
it was a good time.
Honestly, I think because there'll be a significant amount of people in my audience that will want to hear me really delve into and elaborate my thoughts on this film. Yeah. But I'm not really leaning towards doing a whole production of it myself. Like,
and I'm sure you wouldn't want to just drop everything else you're working on now just to do this quick, forgettable
and so
thing.
I guess that's kind of why I was wondering when it would come out, because if I could always time a release of a quickie to link at the end, be like, hey, if you want to hear me talk for like 2 hours on it, click on this thing, and then it's right there.
Yeah, when would you want to get that out? Because I could get that out pretty quick. Audio editing's not as intensive as video editing, obviously.
Really depends on how my voice is doing, honestly. Because I mean, like, I project myself a lot more when I'm doing, like, the actual
yeah, of course,
narration for the reviews, and I've had a little bit of difficulty with that this week, so that's why, I mean, like, there's 2 movies that I want to make, like, little quickie reviews on, but I just can't right now, so I've just been working on my 2015 list instead.
Yeah.
So who knows, but I don't know. Like, I mean, I would likely want to get it out before September 8th, which is when I leave for TIFF.
Yeah, oh, that's more than workable.
Yeah, ideally even earlier, much earlier than that, but I mean, you're in no huge rush.
Yeah, that's ample time. I can definitely do that, because my equivalent of you know, the whole, are you regularly, not to go back to that, but are you kind of regularly working on Synecdoche, like a certain amount of hours a day, or is it just kind of like whenever you're not working on quickies and stuff?
No, I'm there's no constant presence of that project in my schedule, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of leaving it and coming back to it when I feel like it at this point, which makes sense.
Yeah, because if you committed to like a schedule, it would you probably wouldn't put your heart into it as much.
That's when, I mean, it's a series that really, like, eats away at my channel in a sense that, like, there's a lot of the people that like it really love it, but it doesn't really, I mean, it leaves the people who aren't watching that, which is most of my audience, into being starved for some kind of, like, comedy material. So the part 1 and 2 I worked on back to back, thinking I could just do the whole series and it's done. And then I was like, okay, well, shit, I've been working like 2 or 3 months on this shit, and I haven't had like a big funny video in that amount of time. Like, what is my channel anymore? So then I did some of that shit, came back and did 3 and 4, and then just didn't even work on it for a while, obviously, until recently.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, and I did my whole explanation at the beginning of part 5, like, going into more detail about why it's taken so long.
Yeah, what was the line you said, or should I say time is slipping away from me, or something like that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it fits thematically with the film.
Yeah, of course.
So, it makes sense.
All right, well, yeah, like I was saying, you know, thanks for coming on and talking about shit, and
no probs. Yeah, send me a link whenever.
Yeah, hopefully that'll lend a greater sense of credibility, as opposed to, hey, this fucko knows nothing about film, so here's a guy who actually, like, does it for a living, so it'll lend greater weight to it. So
cool.
All right, but yeah, so that's, I'm trying to think of how to end it. I mean, that's pretty much it, but
we'll see you next time on the next Angry Joe Show.